Well, hello everyone. Good morning to me in Santiago, Chile, and good afternoon to Mr. Nick Fletcher. It's an honor and a great pleasure to make contact again. Welcome to my On Headphones channel on YouTube. How are you, Nick? Good to see you and to talk to you
I'm
again.
doing fine, thanks. Yeah. Good to see you, Christian. It's been a while. It's good to
Yeah,
see you again.
yeah. In fact, I've been happy and amazed to see that the new album is, I like it. I don't know if it more or as much as the previous ones, and I'm trying to catch to with all that you've been making. I was amazed really to read that you worked, and I hadn't realized, to be honest, that you worked with the new Rush drummer, which we're going to talk about later, and that you had
Sure.
a very good experience. Yeah, because I think that you first saw her playing with Jeff Beck, which is what I also
hmm
knew. Yeah, but there's a lot of everybody's talking about this, and no one was
Mm,
really expecting Rush to come back. But let's leave that for later. So
sure.
yeah,
Let's talk about that. It's fine. Yeah. Good.
sure. Now, Nick, the last album is has a very interesting cover, and I wonder if the girl on the cover who's like floating up, like going up in the water, has
Yeah.
any relationship at all, like conceptually speaking, with the other album, which is called Quadrivium, I think. Is that so? One of the
Yeah.
previous albums, where there's a girl floating in what like looks like an attic. Is there
Yeah.
any connection in the
Correct.
concept, or is it just a coincidence?
No, there's. I think the thing about when I'm trying to create visuals for a recording, I like to find things that are quite abstract and quite surreal because that I feel helps the listener to stimulate their imagination as to what the concept might be, what is being said, in the music that could relate to these visual accompaniments that I work on to present the music. And also, I like to find ways, in the last few albums anyway, to create some form of connection visually between each album. Um, Although the concepts are different, visually, I like the approach that kind of creates a greater sense of whole to my recorded output rather than very separate and distinct releases.
Hmm. Yeah,
So there is,
this has.
there is an actual idea behind the concept of the new album, and if you see the booklet of the album, it's full of the same sort of imagery of somebody floating in a tank of water. Um,
Yeah.
and the idea behind that, people can make of it what they will, but in relation to the concept of the album, which is to do with the writings of Carl Jung, psychologist, um, it's basically expressing that much of who we are um, lies beneath the surface of what we present.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so the idea of the person sort of floating in water, who's kind of trying to reach the surface, is a way is a kind of thing that we all do. Is that we're all trying to breathe in life and to get to the surface, and often we feel that we're drowning in a sea of despair sometimes. So there's that aspect to it as well. So there's all these little layers that relate to the psychology of the teachings of Carl Jung. That's
Well, luckily there are people that succumb and they're not making it to trying to float and come out these days. And we have so many conflicts going around, and I still
yeah,
wonder myself how 2025 we still have wars. I don't understand how humanity and man hasn't been able to understand how unnecessary those wars are. That the simple word you can come to agreements and I don't know respecting and understanding each other. So I think
yeah,
that's what you tried
totally,
to say too. Hmm.
totally.
So yeah, so this is connected with my other question that now I know you've answered that partially. There are images, maybe stories behind each track or album, and being this the reality, do they come before or after the music to your mind? And I suppose that these are the stories or images that generate the titles of the tracks that are quite particular and quite interesting most of the times. Yeah, they suggest things, they suggest situations, and almost like short movies, maybe. I think that you like movies, by the way, films. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you usually develop something that is based on images, apart from your reading? I know that you read a lot of philosophy and psychology, as you just said.
Yeah, a lot of it does. I mean, I don't very often come up with a concept and then write something to go with a concept.
Okay.
And I don't write the music and then find a concept.
Okay.
What happens is, because I do read a lot, and a lot of those ideas that are floating around in my head, which I'm sort of thinking about and ruminating on, start to stimulate my imagination musically as well. So the two things kind of develop hand in hand. So I'm never totally sure what the concept is going to be until I'm a little bit further down the process. But it's always there in the background, informing what I'm doing. It's a symbiotic process of the imagination. Really.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose they can be separated. Whoa, they are the magic noises we have in this connection. Some voices from I don't know where. Some echoing sounds. Interesting.
Okay.
Well, now a question I've been wanting to ask you: are there any? I'm sure there must be some religious beliefs, life eternal, life after life, supporting or inspiring your music. I'm sure there is.
Yes, I mean, I'm a very I'm not a subscriber to any sort of religious belief system, but I'm a very much believer in a kind of holistic view of life, and in the interrelated interconnectedness of all of existence, really. And I'm very deeply influenced by the teachings of an English philosopher called Alan Watts. And also with that, a lot of Buddhist teaching and Hindu teaching. But I don't actually subscribe to anything as such. But underneath it all, I think most of these philosophical and spiritual ideas coalesce into a kind of idea of wholeness and a holistic view of, you know, how the fabric of the universe is actually one thing, rather than seeing everything as disparate and disconnected.
All right. Now, you have a classical the profile. I mean, as a classical performer and composer, and this contrasts your fusion prog, so to speak, side, where a more dynamic and stronger performer appears. Since I'm not a musician, I might be asking a strange question, but are you still performing classical music? I think you are, and I don't know. I try to find how do you perceive these two platforms as a performer, which are so distant. Yeah.
Yes, I've got kind of two different career paths I've had for many years, really. In that the classical guitar is actually a different sort of. I keep it quite distinct from my other writing and my other playing, and I kind of have to separate them out. They do inform each other, and totally technically on the guitar they inform each other, and musically the way in which I approach playing. But I do tend to keep them as two separate things, and I have to shut down one in order to do the other sometimes. You know, it's not always easy to have your head in all these different musical spaces at the same time.
Yeah, and have you ever considered making an album in the prog jazz fusion area, as like the Mask? There is an album using a classic acoustic guitar, acoustic instruments.
Yeah.
Have you? Yeah.
On my previous album that I released last year was called "A Longing for Home."
Oh yeah.
On that album, I did actually write a classical guitar piece of music, which kind of fitted, and it's one of the rare occasions that I've actually used the classical guitar in the context of my progressive fusion music. But it felt right time to do it, and it felt that the right moment within the evolution of the musical running order of the tracks. So I incorporated that then. But I don't play that much acoustic stuff within my more progressive music. Unlike someone like Steve, who did a lot more of that than I do.
Okay.
Steve Hackett, I'm actually referring to.
Yeah, yes, in fact, yeah. Now, you've been a music fan as myself and everyone listening to your music and Steve Hackett's music. I
Yep.
think that you were originally inspired by the blues, for example, and some of your favorite musicians, Jeff Beck, Steve Hackett, of course, David Gilmour. And in what way do they inspire you? And do you have any others that you would consider like maybe current day emerging guitarists that you think, oh, this guy has a nice way to go?
Yeah, I like guitar playing that speaks to me at a deep level. I'm very much interested in that more than technique. Technique is just a medium a conduit in order to express your feelings and emotions. And so, as long as somebody's expressing something from a deep place, the way in which they do it and the technique they use doesn't really interest me to that extent. And people, the curious thing would be, which would be a bit of an anomaly, would be someone like Alan Holdsworth, or John McLaughlin. Both players have been an influence on my playing, and I perceive them to be, giants of the instrument. But they both play lots and lots of notes very fast.
Yeah.
So they have these phenomenal chops and technique to do that. But when I listen to people like that, underlying what they do is an expressiveness that they put into each and every phrase and note that they play, which I find can be very lacking in a lot of modern players, where they gravitate towards the showing, of their ability, rather than the expressing of the deep emotion that they might be feeling underneath it all. So guitar players who have both is fantastic, and I really appreciate that more than anything. But there are other guitar players whose technique might not be the greatest technique in the world, but they always say something, and they say it with clarity and feeling, and that impresses me because it touches my soul in a deep way. And that's, for me, musically, that's so important. That's vitally important. Everything that a musician does.
And now that you just mentioned him, you surely are aware that John McLaughlin is back with Shakti. I was lucky to make contact with Shankar, a few weeks ago. He's an amazing person and player, and I think he was responsible on a big scale of what Shakti originally was. Yeah. So talking about guitarists and heroes, I just saw some pictures of you with Steve Hackett, what a great guy and gentleman he is, an amazing player and energetic man. He never stops, and that's what making the Genesis fans so happy and his own fans happy. So I think that you not only play then with John. By the way, the Beyond the Stars album is amazing. I was just paying attention to that one. I'm not sure when it was recorded or released, but it's like really interesting.
That came out in 2018.
Yeah.
In fact, that was my first sort of venture back into the world of progressive music for actually decades. I've been in the wilderness for decades and done very little with it. In fact, I hadn't touched an electric guitar for about 20 years almost. For a long period of time. I devoted my life to the classical playing. That album was my first sort of real getting back on the scene, as it were, with that music. And it was really well received. People liked it, got good reviews, and it kind of really, I think it started to galvanize my thought processes into maybe I should do a bit more of this. Maybe it's something I can do, I mean, as a musician, often you go through these phases where you become very, very, you have a lot of self-doubt about what you're doing, and a lot of, concern about am I actually doing anything that's of any worth, any value? Am I putting anything into the world that's actually saying anything? What is the point in doing it? You know?
Well, yeah, well, that's a totally different perception from what any listener could have. So, yeah, if you ever consider doing this again, please do, because this is a really interesting album. I recommend it.
Yeah.
And John is certainly an amazing player, as his brother is. And what can I say about Nick Fletcher? Yeah, well, yeah, hurry up. Yeah, it's really amazing. Yeah. And you've been writing and recording music, but you've also been a producer. What does it take really to be a producer? I don't think it's very easy to say what is right or what is wrong. You can only just lead the person who's going to make music in a way. What is your impression as a producer? What are the easy things and difficult things to do there?
Well, that's a good question, because a lot of people don't realize, people who like music and listen to music a lot don't always understand or realize what the role of a producer is. And so you'll get an album and it'll say on the back of the album, produced by so and so. But what does that actually mean, and how did that affect the actual recording? Now, I think that to be a producer, you need to have one big important ability, and that is to be a very, very good objective listener. Because most musicians, vast majority of musicians, are very much in their own headspace when they're creating and when they're recording, and they don't see or hear the bigger picture of what's going on. And so what they think is a great idea and is a great direction, to them is all consuming. And if they follow that path, then often the end result on a recording can be way off mark and can be a disappointing listen to other people. So the role of the producer is to have a really good objective viewpoint with their listening skills, to be able to say to an artist or a musician, let's not do it that way. Why don't we try it like this? I think this will be a better direction for the music. I think overall it'll take the track in a better direction, in a more cohesive direction, and also to challenge the musician to say, why are you playing that? What is the purpose of doing it? And very often most musicians will say, I just did it, it just felt right. That's great if you're doing a live performance. It just felt right. That's fine, because it's here and then it's gone. But if you're making a recorded document that's going to be around for many years and is a historical record of a piece of music, and for it to stand the test of time, it needs to have somebody in the process who can say, with an objective point of view, I think this will make a better, more cohesive listen for whoever is listening to it outside of the studio. That also takes a lot of trust, because so you have to work with people that you trust and that have got whose skills in listening that you appreciate and respect. And if you do that, then it's a great, fascinating journey making an album, because often music that you thought would sound a certain way is taken in a different path, in a different direction. And generally speaking, when people say that we worked with this great producer who made this album, we worked with so and so in this whatever studio, and he's a great producer, this is what they're saying. They've found somebody who they trust, found somebody who they can work with, who they value, whose opinion they value and appreciate, knowing that they have their best interests at heart. They have an overview of the whole instrumentation, the whole musical architecture of the composition and the album. If you find somebody like that, it really helps in producing a better quality recording.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any remarkable experiences while producing? I'm hearing myself. That's funny. Yeah.
Yes, I have interest. I tend to work with my friend Caroline Bonnett, who is I always work with Caroline because for the very reason that I've said, I trust her intuition, I trust her objectivity. So it's always very helpful to work with her. And there's been many, many, many experiences where, I'll be doing something and she will stop the recording, and she will say to me, okay, that's great, but I'm not quite sure where this is going. And
That
I have
must
to
be
say,
difficult.
okay, I think I'm going somewhere with this, and she'll say, well, yeah, and if you're doing this in a live situation, probably it would be a good idea. But we're making something here that's going to be for people to listen to over and over and over again. So all the note choices and all the direction, the phrasing that you put into this has got to be right, and you've got to be the right direction. You know, I mean, on the guitar, there are so many different ways in which you can make a musical phrase. There's so many permutations and possibilities, both in the way in which you physically play the instrument and also the sound that's generated as a result of the amplification or whatever. And there are times when I would play something and Caroline will say, well, that's not the right sound. It's not the right way to phrase it. You need to have, those notes need to be longer. Those notes need to be shorter. Why don't we try it like that? And so with the work of her objectivity and my musical abilities working together, we can craft something which then will be hopefully more interesting for the listener. Of course, the listener just gets what they get and they hear what they hear. They know nothing of this process that's going off within the recording itself. You know, so I could give you a shed load of takes of things that I've done in the studio that you would go, oh wow, is that what you did on that track? Oh crikey, that would have sounded very different if you'd have done that. If you'd have released that, and so that's you know that's often how it works, and I've had lots of experience of doing that particularly with her, because she is my go-to favorite producer.
She's your engineer as well,
and she's a great sound engineer. Not all producers are sound engineers. I've functioned in studios as a producer, doing the very thing that we've been talking about with other bands and artists. Years ago, I used to do a lot of it. I don't do so much of it nowadays, but I've never been a hands-on the desk kind of guy, apart from in mixing situations I have. But in terms of actually recording the sound, that's a different skill, and it requires a different approach and understanding of how to get things onto tape.
It takes some guts, doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really does.
And what makes the difference between a sound engineer that you can really feel confident about, and what makes Annette so special? Because excuse me, there are so many noted sound engineers, and you've been working with her for some time now. Yeah. What makes her special?
I mean, she's a lot of her. She learned her craft many years ago, working in lots of different studios, and particularly at Abbey Road, which is a studio you may have heard of. And so she'd learned from the best. So she's had lots of, guidance and inspiration from watching and working with some really, really classic, skilled sound engineers. So again, it's to do with ears. It's to do with hearing frequencies, understanding frequencies, and how they relate to each other, so that you can create an album that sonically is cohesive, doesn't irritate the listener too much because there's certain frequencies stand out and muddy the waters or so forth. And also mic positioning when you're recording acoustic instruments. Where do you place the microphones and all that kind of business is really, really important, so that you don't pick up any unwanted sound waves and resonances and this kind of business. It's a very skillful mindset. You really have to be a sound engineer. It's not something I've ever really been involved with. I'm technically not very adept at things. I can just about operate this laptop, and that's about it, really.
Yeah, I was going to say that it must be a responsibility then, the way your albums sound. It's like a wall of sound. It's so massive and powerful, and at the same time, everything is where it should be in the right place. So it's an interesting approach, and that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, I like my sort of progressive rock music to sound powerful. I think that for me, growing up listening to albums, the impact of an album was always a very visceral experience. which helped me really get into the sort of rhythmical aspect of what was being conveyed in an album. It's very difficult to capture on an album what you hear in a live performance. But that's always something that I've always wanted to try and do, is to try and get the power and the energy of a live performance into a studio recording. So to getting the sonics right and to get the musicians to interact with each other properly in that way is really important to me, to create a more visceral impact for the listener.
Right. Have you been, well, I mean, you've been promoting Mask of Insanity, just released last Monday.
Sanity, Mask of Sanity.
Sanity, yes,
it's all right.
It. Yeah.
You're not the first person to say that.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, but I know you've been promoting it, but how easy or not easy is it to take it on tour? I think touring is not just, oh, let's go on tour, let's have fun, some fun. And you've been working with Bad Dog Productions. I'm sure that they are supporting you in a great way, helping you promote everything. Because I really am going to be very honest. I feel that you're such an amazing and talented musician, writer, and performer that I wish that more and more people should get to hear your music. I'm sure that is going to happen. I mean, it's been happening, but I think that if I ask my friends or colleagues that are into rock, are you familiar with Nick Fletcher? Oh, not really. And I think it's not fair. Sorry, I'm being very honest here, because I'm seeing it from the way that things happen in my country. You know, Chile used to be a very limited country regarding recording industry. We had to buy import records all the time back in the 60s, 70s, and until the 80s. So, but I wish you get really more. I'm sure that Bad Dog are doing good promotion with you. So, how about the tour?
Sure.
How is it going these days?
Well, I mean, most of our live work and touring work is with John, the John Hackett Band. We do an awful lot in the UK. But as regards promoting my own material, it's all really been about building a fan base of people who are interested in what I do. Getting gigs with the kind of music that I play in itself is difficult. The second difficulty is finding the right musicians in order to perform it with, because it is so important for me to have the right musicians to interact with, which is why the albums are always the musicians are always very carefully chosen, and it's all very well thought out as to who to ask to work, that I want to work with to create this, this production. So doing that is difficult. So there's those kind of difficulties in terms of finding, getting the gigs in the first place to promote the kind of music that I do. Also finding the right musicians to perform it. And also the fact that, I'm not a particularly, confident artist, and I'm not very good at promoting myself. And I've suffered for years with a lot of self-doubt about my ability to do anything. So taken together, there are things there which make it a little more awkward for me to present this music in a live situation. That said, it is my ultimate goal. I would like to do that. I would very much like to do it. And I'm still always toying with the idea of trying to find a way forward in order to do it. So I'm hoping it will happen.
Now, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the band on the Mask. There are some names I don't dare pronouncing, but they play so well. They are so interesting musicians that I'm really not familiar with, to be honest.
Okay.
But maybe you could tell us a little bit about the personnel on the album, Nick.
Sure. Okay, so Caroline, I've worked with for many years. Caroline plays keyboards on the album. She engineered it, and she was co-producer. I'd like to think we're a bit of a recording team that works very well together. We haven't fallen out yet, which is good. So that's the basis of things. Obviously, I'm playing the guitars. I have a lady called Clare Lindley who's playing violin, and Clare is the violinist with a band called Big Big Train.
Yeah, sure.
They're very well known in the States and the UK and in Europe. So she came in to play some violin. Bass player is a chap called Jonathan Ihlenfeld Cuniado, who is a German bass player. I'll come on to him in a minute in a little bit more detail because the connection with Jonathan is that he is the bass player in the Anika Nilles Band.
Wow.
Of course. Yeah. So I'll talk about that when we get to talk about Anika a little bit more. Yeah. And then on drums, I have an young Italian lad called Roberto Porta, and Roberto is just probably one of the most outstanding drummers I've seen or heard in decades. He is unbelievably talented and musical and technically skillful in mind-boggling ways. He's a phenomenal talent. So getting Roberto to play on the album was really, really great. And I'm very grateful that he came on board for it, because originally this was the third album that I was going to do with Anika. But as you know, something happened recently.
Yeah, something happened. Oh, I was going there. I heard that.
I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll just finish off. What I was going to say about the album.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so and then the final collaborator is Olga Dikajee Karpova, who's a brilliant young Russian singer who lives in the UK, and she's an amazing talent in the progressive rock scene. Very original writer, producer, filmmaker, artist. She's a real polymath, and she's a wonderful, wonderful singer. And she can turn her voice to do anything. She's got a sort of the vocal gymnastics that she can do is unbelievable. So for this album, she sang my last album, and I got to come back and did a couple of tracks on this album too, because it's really, really great to work with her, and she's adds so much to the albums that's a bit different. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How sane or insane do you think this world we're living in is these days? Be honest, Nick. How sane or insane? Because there seems to be black and white shadows everywhere, and we were talking about the ongoing wars that are so terrible until today, and they seem to be never going to stop. I don't know. Yeah. So the Mask of
I think
of Sanity.
Yeah. My own personal sort of view on it, from my limited perspective and understanding of world events and what's going on, is that I think the sort of bottom line of it is that I think humanity's kind of lost its way. And I think there's been times in the past when humanity's lost its way too. I think, in the sort of 1930s, leading up to the Second World War, was a case in point. And it seems to be indicative of a title that I used for my first album, which was called Cycles of Behavior. Because that was all about the repetitive cycles that human beings find themselves trapped in. We repeat the patterns of the past, and not always the good patterns. But, and so I think we were going through a period of where we've lost our way, and my hope is that we will re-find it at some point. If not, then we've got a big problem. If not,
we must keep faith.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, your latest albums have been released by Rough Draft Records. What's your relationship with the label? It seems that you're the only artist I've seen on the catalog. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. It's called Rough Draft Audio, and it's a small label that's actually run by a friend of mine who's the drummer in the Steve Hackett band. That's a chap called Duncan Parsons. And he basically set it up to release his own recordings, but also he's a promoter, and so he promotes gigs and so forth under that idea called Rough Draft Audio as well. So, but because of working with him, we discussed about the possibility of him releasing some of my stuff, and because we get on very well, he's very, very helpful, and we know each other very well. He tends to, release this stuff for me because it's much easier to do it that way. So and also because it's not the kind of record company where anybody's overseeing artistic control. He's quite happy for me to let me do what I want, which is great, because I don't want to be involved with a label that has artistic control over what I write.
I see. And what's your Nick? What's your real comfort zone? Classical, rock, just rock, all of them. I know they go their own
Ooh,
separate ways, but yeah.
that's a good question. What is my comfort zone? Um, I don't particularly feel totally comfortable with anything, um, because generally speaking, I've spent most of my life pushing the envelope of what I can do creatively. So if I find myself thinking in terms of being in a comfort zone, I've always think that's for myself. I find that's not a good place to be, because I want to be pushing the boundaries of, of what I can do, what I can create. Um, and sometimes that puts me into uncomfortable territory, because it really stretches my ability to actually what I'm actually doing and playing. So I like to hear things that push me creatively, and then I have to find a way of physically doing that, you know, with the guitar and with other musicians. And often that will take me into slightly less comfortable areas. So because of that, I probably don't. The only thing I would ever feel totally comfortable with is if I played the blues.
Mhm.
If I played the blues, I can settle into that and sit back and just enjoy playing, because that is my roots of everything I've ever done. You know, is blues music, and so that is very comfortable and a very safe environment for me to express myself. Um, but I don't. But I'm not a blues guitarist in that sense, because I'm always trying to find new ways and different ways and bring into different ideas and musical soundscapes and colors and textures to and rhythms to sort of push the envelope of creatively of what I do.
So maybe you would not say that there's an evolution between Mask and the previous albums, or there's just a different color, different mood.
Yeah, again, that's another good question. Is there an evolution? Um, I think there is an evolution in some respects, because obviously working with different musicians can take the music that you've written into a different direction than what you probably would have done with a different musician. So in that sense, I suppose the music does evolve, but essentially it's still music that I have written and conceived. So um, in a sense, like you say, it probably takes. It's a bit like telling a story. You know, a writer has a way of telling his stories that you can read their books, and there's something in their writing that makes you feel that you know the author, but it may be a very different story, you know, from book to book. And so I think that's what I would hope that my music is like. It's like you know, you recognize the writer, you recognize the film director, but each film that they make or each story that they write is has its own narrative and it's different. That makes sense.
Um, well, it happens that I'm a film fan too, since I was a child, and I like a lot Bergman from Sweden, you know, and Hitchcock, but I also like Sulawski. I am a big fan of Possession with amazing Isabella Gianni and Sam Neill.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and those are really hard movies to watch to understand. You read a lot
they
between the
are.
lines. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
but you can
could you?
generally you can always kind of you always get a flavor of knowing that this is a Bergman movie or a
Yep.
Hitchcock movie or a,
Yeah,
Pasolini or whoever there might be. You can always there's something in the direction, there's something in the way in which the storytelling,
yeah,
the coloration of the film, the editing of the film, that you can attribute to that particular director. And for
yeah,
me, that I like to equate that with making records. You know, that's the role of the producer and the artist is to do that. So you will see a difference between each recording, but each recording tells a different story. But it's probably done in a way that has the trademark of that particular artist. You know.
yeah. And movies do have all that you're describing is related to some kind of like a flavor almost that you find you recognize in every single piece of work that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend us an amazing movie that you would you usually go back and watch and watch over? I have a favorite list of movies that I usually keep watching, and it's like eating your favorite dish again. You never get tired of it. So, what are a couple of movies you would say?
I
Oh,
mean,
these
there are,
are.
yeah, I mean, because there are so many, and so many great directors. I do, in a sort of, I've never been a great Hollywood fan. Although that said, there are, obviously great directors like Spielberg and Christopher Nolan who've made phenomenal films. Um, I do particularly like Christopher Nolan's work. I think he's a phenomenal director, and there's a number of his films that I really like. Inception, I think, was one of them, which is a fascinating film.
Mm-hmm.
Leonardo DiCaprio. That was a fascinating film, and he did another fascinating sci-fi film that I just can't quite remember the name of, although I do like it. But it's actually one of my favorite films. But when you put me on the spot, recalling names is not my it's not my best thing. But if it comes back to me when we're talking, I shall tell you. Yeah.
All right. Now, one question before the last question.
Interstellar.
Ah, sure. Yeah, I know it by name, but I never saw it really. I'm not a big fan of modern science fiction, though I'm a big fan of Stanley Kubrick, as you may probably be.
Yeah.
He was an amazing man.
I'm not either really, but there's something about that film which I find extremely moving and involving, and it's a fascinating story. Yeah, about to do with time and space. Yeah, but he directs it brilliantly.
All right. Now, what moves you to take your guitar and a pen and put it to paper and write a tune? This is a simple question, but I never know what the motivation is. I'm sure it's like something natural, like needing to breathe or eat. So what makes you feel like
that's exactly what it is? Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I just it's a compulsion that I just do.
Well,
it just happens.
I wish it keeps happening, please, because every compulsion has been really satisfactory and amazing.
That's really great. Well, thank you, I appreciate it. And the sixth album is pretty much already written, so the next project's on its way.
If we look at the next cover, I've been taking this from your own website, I guess. Longing for Home. I think that the personnel, that the band you had on this album, that is amazing too, has a lot to do with my next question, Nick, and it's that you have expressed your admiration for Anika Nilles, who participated on this Longing for Home album, and that now we are all all the social networks exploded this week with the news that Anika is being part of the next Rush reunion tour. So I'd like you to tell us a little story about how all this happened.
Okay, well, I first saw Anika play with Jeff Beck a few years ago when he was doing his last tour before he sadly passed away. And I was very, very, very impressed with her playing. Everything about what she could do, she did brilliantly, but she could switch very quickly from one type of music to another almost instantly and create the right feel, the perfect feel for everything that was being done. And technically immaculate, very, very articulate musical drummer. And I thought I'd love to be able to do some recording with her. So I approached her, and she listened to some of my stuff, and she got back to me and said that she really liked it and she'd be very interested in working with me on it. So we worked on the album called Quadrivium, which was in 2023. And that went really well, and she delivered some terrific stuff. Interestingly, that also people probably don't know that most of Anika's playing that you can see on YouTube, and there's lots of it, and her work with people like Jeff and her own band, much of it is what you would call progressive rock. There's a lot of funk, there's a lot of fusion, there's a lot of blues, a lot of rock, but there's nothing really much that you would say is progressive rock in the sense that you would deem it to be in terms of a band like Rush. So this is why I think it's quite an interesting choice that they made, because her prog credentials are not out there in the world in a way that people would have thought. You know, they would probably perceive her as a different kind of drummer. But on my albums, that is exactly what she does. I mean, the music is very progressive in the sense that there's lots of odd time signatures and so forth going off in the writing. And so not only does she have to be powerful and technically adept at dealing with standard sort of rhythms, but also there's complexity in what I write, which is to do with progressive rock music, which is her example of her playing that is really to the fore on both Quadrivium and the album we did last year together, which is called Longing for Home. And she is a phenomenal musician who can handle progressive rock as good as anybody, and I include Pert.
You said that one of the musicians on your album, The Mask of Sanity, is in her band. So that's interesting to explore. It's going to be interesting to explore. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, each album that I make, there has to be, like you said before, I like to have some kind of evolution between the albums, and that's often created between the different interactions between different musicians. If you use the same musicians all the time, you start to get an interaction which can be very, very similar, and then it's hard to break out of that and go somewhere else with the music. And because I'm always pushing at the edges and wanting to develop and to try new things, I think that's an important part of what I do. So I wanted a new bass player at one point, and that was on the album A Longing for Home, which was 2024. I had some conversations with Anika about this, and Anika just said, "Well, why don't you ask my drummer, my bassist, Jonathan, to play on the album?" And now I thought, well, if he says yes, this would be great, because it would be a dream rhythm section, because he's the bass player. He knows her playing inside out. It's a marriage made in heaven, really, there musically. So I did approach Jonathan, and Jonathan was really interested and wanted to do the album. So he did that album with Anika. And then The Mask of Sanity was written, a lot of it was recorded, well, mostly recorded underway this year. And both Jonathan and Anika were doing the album. And then I got a call from Anika, just not long after she received the tracks that she was starting to work on, and saying, "I've got some news. I think I need to talk to you." So we had a conversation, and she told me the news about what transpired. And of course, I wasn't going to say anything to anyone about any of that. But the day before we had our conversation, she had a phone call from Geddy Lee, and of course, when you get a phone call from somebody like that saying, "Would you like to be in our band?" you don't say no, do you? So basically, she had a huge amount of work in learning that material for the next set of rehearsals with Rush, and so unfortunately, she couldn't do my album. It was just her workload was just too great. So I had to get somebody else to do the album. Now, Roberto, I had in mind for my next album. I've wanted to work with Roberto for a couple of years now. And Roberto, I said to him, "Well, would you like to do this album?" And he jumped at the chance and he said yes, and he came on and he gave his all to it, and he made a fantastic job of the playing, and interpreted the music brilliantly, and I'm so thrilled with his playing and what he's contributed to it. And then, of course, the album was released on the 6th of October, which is just a few days ago. The very day that Rush made the announcement that Anika was joining Rush, which is quite a strange experience, because I knew that announcement would be coming at some point, but I didn't think it would come on the same day as the release of my own album. So the album that she was going to be playing on. which is a slight sort of ironic twist to the tale, really.
Two great news. Two great news.
Yeah,
great music coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
So in case you want,
so basically that's how it happened, and that's my, and obviously I've having worked with Anika and knowing her playing really quite intimately, I think that anybody who, has any reservations about maybe her ability to, sit in the drum chair of one of the great giants of progressive rock drumming should not be worried at all.
So there are two facts here. You're going to have to wait until the Rush tour finishes if you want to invite her again to your next album. And then
yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, I've got this other project that's on formulating and pretty much written now, and that album will definitely be featuring Roberto again. And because because I love Roberto's work and we work very well together, and that's just musically a really great thing to do. But also because Anika is also incredibly busy. When I first met Anika, I knew that she was going to become a giant of the drums in
time.
Musical world. Yeah, I mean, it was just obvious. It was only a question of time before, she would be massively involved in all this music and be up there with the greats, because she is that good. She is a superstar of the drums. So I knew that, but I was so grateful and so fortunate to work with her at a time just before this kind of thing happened, and to do 2 albums with her, it was a great privilege, a great honor, and musically, I was thrilled to bits with the results that she gave, because she threw herself into it, the music, 100%, and you can hear that on the recordings, the sort of the joy and the passion that she brings to her playing. As well as the fact that she can technically find her way around a drum kit, she's a genius.
I was thinking maybe there's a sort of resistance. I mean, in the social networks, everybody's saying, "Oh, how come," etc., etc. And Neil Peart was unique, etc., etc. But I think there could be something like male-ish about progressive rock. So how come a lady is going to be on the drums? I don't know. Maybe I'm just imagining this, but there could be something about it.
Well, it's just like, I think there's an awful lot of psychology, male psychology, that's connected with power. When you're playing the drums, it's all about the power. You are the powerhouse of a band when you're playing rock. And I can tell you for one now that she is one of the most powerful drummers I've ever heard. And the reason she's so powerful isn't because that she's got biceps out here somewhere. It's because she has the most brilliant technique, and which enables her to play the most incredible range of dynamics on the kit, which is perfect for progressive rock, because progressive rock is also not only about the power, but it's about the subtlety of interpreting rhythm,
exactly, yes,
and complex rhythm. And Anika can do that better than anybody.
Right. Well said. Yeah, we're going to wait for. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the last thing, Nick. No, one thing before the last. I'm so curious to ask you what music is behind you. You have so many CDs behind you. What do you usually listen to? Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a shop. This is actually. Well, you've got some yourself, Christian. You've got a few there.
Just a couple.
What do I listen to? Oh, well, a huge range of music is what interests me. There's a lot of progressive rock. There's a lot of jazz fusion, a lot of classical music. Obviously, that's a big part of my background as well. So there's some world music, and there's quite an array of music. And then there's this. This is a bit of a plug.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
That's what you call product placement thing.
Yeah, that's really an amazing item. Congratulations. You have,
Thank you.
Yeah. So, are you going to tour in some extent the album? Are you going to? I mean, maybe. Do you think it could happen outside the UK one day? And maybe. Yeah.
Well, I hope so. I mean, next year I would like to try and get some dates together. to do something. But it's to do with availability, it's cost, it's opportunity. We'll see how it goes. The John Hackett Band will be doing some gigs in Europe next year, which is great because of the whole sort of leaving the EU problem that we've had in the UK has meant doing gigs in Europe has been really quite difficult to do. It's put a lot of obstacles in our way, but we have managed it, and we've got some gigs coming up next year in Europe. So I'm looking forward to that too.
What are the obstacles? I'm sorry, you mean
well, it's the bureaucracy and the red tape and getting through the customs, all this stuff.
Okay.
Makes life more difficult.
Yeah, it seems it seems it does. Yeah, well, Nick, thank you so much for your time. It's been really so entertaining and informative. I've learned a lot every time I have the chance to speak to people like you and that have the kindness of sharing time with us who want to support the music that you make.
Oh, no, it's a great pleasure, and the fact that people like yourself are supportive means so much to me. So thank you. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to give me a second. I'm going to pause this. So until next time, I hope this is not the last time. So thanks for the time and good luck and congratulations because you achieved something really amazing. I'm being very honest here. Yeah, thank you for that.
That's very kind. Cheers, Christian.